My daughter looked me straight in the eye at Dubai airport, pressed something on her phone, and smiled while my boarding pass disappeared from the screen. Then she picked up her designer bag, turned her back on me and walked away, leaving me with no ticket, no phone, no wallet and no way home. My heart slammed against my ribs so hard I thought I might faint right there under the bright airport lights. People rushed past me with rolling suitcases and sleepy children, and all I could hear was my own daughter's cold voice saying, "You should have stayed out of my business, Mom." I stood there shaking, 64 years old, alone in a foreign country, when a tall man in a dark suit stepped close and whispered, "Pretend you are my wife for a moment. My driver is almost here. Trust me, your daughter is going to regret this." What kind of mother hears words like that from a stranger and realizes the stranger feels safer than her own child? My name is Linda Parker, and until that night I still believed there were some lines family would never cross. I had raised my daughter, Chloe, by myself after my husband, Mark, died when Chloe was only 10. Mark had been a kind man with rough hands, a soft laugh, and a habit of kissing my forehead every morning before work. When he got sick, it happened fast. Too fast. One year we were planning a family beach trip, and the next I was standing beside a hospital bed, trying not to cry in front of my little girl. After Mark passed, I did everything I could to make sure Chloe never felt the full weight of that loss. I worked double shifts at a clothing store for years. I skipped meals sometimes so Chloe could have class trips and nice shoes and school pictures with a bright smile. I packed her lunches with little notes inside. I sat through dance recitals, science fairs, and boring school plays where I could barely hear her lines, but I clapped like she had won an Oscar every single time. And Chloe used to love me for it, at least I thought she did. When she was young, she would crawl into bed beside me on stormy nights and whisper, "You will always be my best friend, Mom." If someone had told me then that this same girl would one day leave me stranded in one of the biggest airports in the world, I would have laughed in their face. But children grow up. Sometimes they grow kind, sometimes they grow selfish, sometimes they grow into people you do not recognize. The first time I felt that change in Chloe was after she married Brent Lawson. Brent had perfect teeth, polished shoes, and the kind of smile that looked friendly until you noticed it never reached his eyes. He worked in luxury real estate and loved talking about success, money, and important people. He called everyone buddy, even women old enough to be his mother, and he liked to joke that feelings were expensive and weakness was bad for business. I did not like him, not from the start. I tried, I truly did. I told myself maybe I was being too protective, maybe I was just afraid of losing my daughter to a new life, but every time Brent walked into a room I felt a chill I could never explain. Chloe, though, acted like he hung the moon. She laughed at everything he said. She changed the way she dressed, the way she talked, even the way she looked at other people. She began using words like status and leverage, words that had never lived in our small, simple life before him. At first it was little things. She stopped calling every day and called once a week. Then once every 2 weeks. Then only when she needed something. "Could you lend us a little money until Brent closes a deal? Can you watch the dog for a week? Could you tell Aunt Susan not to mention that old house story again?" I noticed that last one. That old house story was about the little yellow home Mark and I bought when we were 27. It was the house where Chloe grew up. It was small, cheerful, and paid off before Mark died. After his death, I rented it out because the extra income helped me survive. Over time, the neighborhood changed. New shops came in. Property values rose. What had once been a modest house became worth much more than anyone expected. I never talked much about money, but Brent asked about that house too often. "Is it in your name only? Do you have a will? What happens to it when you pass?" He would say these things with a little laugh, like it was all harmless curiosity. Chloe would roll her eyes and tell me he was just business-minded. Still, I felt uneasy. Then, 6 months before the Dubai trip, Chloe invited me to dinner at a fancy restaurant downtown. She ordered sparkling water with lemon and held my hand across the table like she used to when she was a girl. "Mom," she said softly, "Brent has a huge opportunity in Dubai. Luxury development, big investors. It could change everything for us." I smiled and said I was happy for her. Then she leaned closer. "He thinks it would look better if family came too, just for a short trip. There will be meetings, dinners, a lot of wealthy people. If they see we are close, it helps. And honestly, Mom, you deserve a vacation." That last part got me. I had not taken a real trip in years. I still used the same old toaster I had bought when Mark was alive. I still clipped coupons and compared grocery prices. A trip sounded nice, even if I knew deep down I was not being invited just for fun. "What do you need from me, honey?" I asked. She smiled. "Nothing big, just be warm and supportive. And maybe bring the documents for the yellow house, in case Brent wants to help you set up a better estate plan while we are all together." There it was. I looked at her for a long moment. Why would Brent need my property papers in Dubai? Because he knows people, Mom. He can help. He wants to protect your future. Protect my future. That sounded sweet, but something about it made me sit very still. I told her I would think about it. That night I went home, sat at my kitchen table and stared at the family photo on the fridge. Mark with his arm around me. Chloe at 16 grinning with braces, us at the beach, us at Christmas, us before the world got sharp and shiny and strange. I wanted to believe my daughter loved me. I wanted to believe this trip was clumsy kindness, not a setup. In the weeks before we left, Chloe called more often than she had in years. She asked if I had found my passport. She told me to buy comfortable shoes. She said Dubai was beautiful, safe, modern, exciting. Brent even called once to ask if I preferred aisle or window. It all felt so polished that it made me nervous. So I did something I had never done before. I made copies of every important paper I had. The deed to the yellow house, my savings records, my insurance papers, my updated will, and I left the originals locked in a bank box at home. I only carried copies in my suitcase. I did not tell Chloe. I did not tell Brent. A small voice inside me said, "Be careful." I listened. The trip started well enough. The flight was long and my knees ached, but when we landed, Dubai looked like another world. Tall glass buildings rose into the sky like silver dreams. The airport was huge, bright, and polished so clean it almost looked unreal. Even the air smelled expensive. Chloe seemed energized the moment we arrived. Brent acted important. He spoke fast, checked his phone constantly, and greeted men in suits like they were old friends. He and Chloe stayed in a beautiful hotel. They put me in a nice room too, though not on the same floor. Chloe laughed and said they were just booked that way. For the first 2 days, I played along. We went to dinners. I smiled at strangers. I wore the blue dress Chloe picked for me. I nodded through conversations about investments, luxury towers, and private buyers. But I noticed things. Brent watched me too closely whenever property or inheritance came up. Chloe kept asking whether I had brought the papers. Once, when she thought I was in the restroom, I came back and heard Brent hiss, "If she signs this week, we can move fast." And Chloe whispered back, "She will, just stop pushing." I froze behind a tall plant near the hall. My mouth went dry. Signs what? That night I could barely sleep. The air conditioner hummed above me and city lights spilled through the hotel curtains. I kept thinking of Mark. I kept hearing Brent's voice. I kept seeing Chloe's careful smile. The next morning, Chloe knocked on my door carrying coffee and pastries. "Mom," she said brightly, "Brent arranged a meeting with a legal advisor today. Nothing serious, just paperwork planning. We thought it would be smart." I looked at her over the rim of my cup. "Smart for who?" Her smile twitched. "For all of us." I set the cup down. "I am not signing anything in another country." Her face changed so fast it shocked me. The warmth vanished, her jaw tightened. "Why do you always make things harder than they need to be?" "Harder than what?" She stood up, packing. "Mom, you do not understand how big this is. Brent has been trying to build something major. If we can use the house as collateral for a short time, it opens doors. We would pay it back. This is not stealing." The room went quiet. I stared at her. Collateral. That little yellow house was not just property. It was my life with Mark. It was my years of sacrifice. It was the one safe thing I had left. And now my daughter was talking about using it like a pawn on a game board. "You brought me here to pressure me into risking my home." Her eyes flashed. "Do not make this dramatic." Dramatic. My voice shook, I could not help it. You invited me across the world under false promises to get access to my property. That is not business, Chloe. That is betrayal. She crossed her arms. You are being selfish. I laughed then, one short broken laugh. Selfish, the woman who skipped meals for you is selfish. For a second, something like shame flickered across her face, but it disappeared almost at once. Brent says people like you hold on to old things because they are afraid. People like me. Yes, Mom, small thinking people, that house is dead weight. I stood up so fast the chair scraped the floor. That dead weight paid for your braces, your school clothes and your college books. Her lips pressed into a thin line. We argued for almost an hour, quiet at first then louder. She kept saying I owed it to her to trust her. I kept saying trust had to be earned. She said Brent was trying to build a future for them. I said not with my roof over my head. She called me old-fashioned. I called her blind. By the end we were both shaking. Then I said the words that changed everything. I know you brought me here for those papers, and I know Brent wants me to sign something. But I am going back home, and when I do, I may need to make some changes to my will. Her face turned white. What changes? The kind that protect me. She left my room without another word. All afternoon, she ignored me. That evening, Brent smiled too much at dinner, which told me Chloe had told him everything. He asked if I was feeling tired. He asked if travel was overwhelming at my age. He asked whether I trusted Chloe to make smart decisions for the family. I said very little. The next morning, Chloe told me our return flight had been changed to an earlier time because Brent had to stay longer for work. She was taking me to the airport personally. During the drive, she kept one hand on her phone. Her face looked smooth and calm, but I knew that look. It was the look she used to get right before lying to a teacher in high school. At the airport, she moved fast. Too fast. We stopped near a check-in kiosk and she asked to see my boarding details. Before I understood what was happening, she had my phone in her hand. Then came the moment I will never forget. Her thumb moved across the screen. My boarding pass vanished. She slipped my phone into her bag, along with my wallet, which she had been holding for me during the ride. Then she looked at me with a strange, hard smile I had never seen before. You should have stayed out of my business, Mom. And she walked away. I called after her, my voice cracked. People turned to stare, she never looked back. For a few seconds I could not move. The airport lights felt too bright. My knees weakened. I reached into my purse and found nothing useful because my purse had no phone, no wallet, no passport. Chloe had them all. I was standing there with a paper hotel receipt, a tissue and a lip balm. I felt old, foolish, very, very alone. I asked one airport worker for help, but my voice was shaking so badly I could barely explain. He asked for identification. I had none. He asked for a phone number. I knew my home number but not Chloe's new international number by heart. Panic rose in my chest like water. Then I heard a low voice beside me. Do not panic, just look at me and nod. I turned. A tall man stood there, maybe in his 40s, wearing a dark suit with no tie. He had serious eyes, neat brown hair, and the calm expression of someone used to emergencies. He did not look flirtatious or strange. He looked focused. Pretend you are my wife for a moment, he whispered. My driver is almost here. Trust me, your daughter is going to regret this. I stared at him, terrified and confused. What? He did not look away from the crowd ahead. 2 men have been watching you since your daughter left. They saw you were stranded. I heard enough to know you are in trouble. If you walk with me now, they may back off. If I am wrong, you lose nothing. If I am right, you need to move. My blood ran cold. I started to turn my head, but he said softly, do not look around. My mouth went dry. Who are you? He finally glanced at me. My name is Daniel Reed, and whether you trust me or not, you have exactly 5 seconds to decide. Then I heard footsteps behind me, and someone said, Mom, you dropped something. But I knew I had not dropped a thing. I did not know whether Daniel Reed was saving me or leading me into a different kind of trouble, but the fear in his voice felt real. My whole body was shaking so badly that I could barely breathe. The footsteps behind me were getting closer. I kept hearing that smooth voice say, "Mom, you dropped something," but I had not dropped anything. I had nothing left to drop. Daniel moved first. He placed one hand lightly near my elbow, not grabbing, just gidding, and said in a calm voice anyone nearby could hear, "There you are, sweetheart." I was starting to worry. It was such an ordinary sentence, but it changed everything. Suddenly, we looked like a tired married couple trying to find our driver after a long flight. Not a frightened older woman abandoned in a giant airport. Not an easy target. I forced my legs to move. We started walking together at a steady pace, not too fast, not too slow. "Do not look behind you," Daniel said under his breath. "Just keep walking with me." My mouth felt dry as paper. "Who are those men?" "I am not sure yet," he said, "but they noticed you were alone and confused. That is enough for me." His tone stayed calm, but I could feel tension in the way he held his shoulders. He was paying attention to everything around us without turning his head. I tried to do the same, but my eyes kept filling with tears. "I cannot do this," I whispered. "My passport is gone, my phone is gone, my daughter took everything." Daniel looked down at me for 1 second, and his face softened. "Then you stay beside me until we fix one problem at a time." We reached a quieter area near a row of private pickup doors. A black car was waiting outside the glass. The driver stepped out at once when he saw Daniel and hurried to open the back door. Daniel stopped before we got in. "One question," he said quietly. "Did your daughter leave because of money?" I stared at him. "How did you know that?" "Because greed leaves a certain look on people," he said. "I saw her face before she walked away, and I heard enough to know this was not some family misunderstanding." I swallowed hard. "She wanted me to sign over power on my house. I refused." His jaw tightened. "Then get in the car, right now." I did. The door closed, and for the first time since Chloe walked away, I felt a tiny bit safer. The inside of the car was cool and quiet. The city lights moved past the windows like bright streaks. My hands would not stop trembling. I pressed them together in my lap, but it did not help. Daniel sat across from me, not too close, giving me space. He told the driver something in a low voice, and we pulled away from the airport. After a long minute, he said, "My name really is Daniel Reed." I let out a weak breath. "That is good to know." He gave a small, tired smile. "I am American. I live between New York and Dubai for work. I own a logistics company and a security firm. I am not asking you to trust me completely, but I do need you to tell me the truth if I am going to help you." I studied his face. He looked polished, yes, but not fake like Brent. His eyes were too steady for that. There was something worn and honest in them, like he had seen enough in life to stop playing games. "My name is Linda Parker," I said, "and I am sorry if I get confused. I still feel like I am dreaming." "You are not dreaming," he said. "You were abandoned in an international airport and then almost approached by men who should not have been watching you. Confusion is normal." That plain way of saying it somehow helped. So I told him. Not every detail at first, but enough. I told him about Chloe, about Brent, about the yellow house, about the trip, about the papers, about the argument, about my refusal, about how Chloe had taken my phone, wallet, and passport and cancelled my ticket before walking away. The more I spoke, the quieter Daniel became. By the time I finished, his face looked cold. "Your daughter and her husband planned this," he said. I shook my head slowly. I kept hoping it was not a plan. I kept hoping she was just angry. But at the airport she looked prepared. She had already decided. Daniel nodded once. Yes, she had. His certainty strung, because deep down I knew he was right. The car turned through tall gates into a beautiful private property with warm lights and trimmed gardens. The house was large but not showy. It looked lived in, not like one of those empty rich houses you see in magazines. The driver opened my door and Daniel walked me inside. A woman in a navy uniform met us at the entrance. She looked to be in her 50s, with kind eyes and silver streaks in her hair. "Marta," Daniel said, "this is Mrs. Parker. She is our guest tonight. Please help her with anything she needs." Marta nodded at once. "Of course, sir." "Guest." The word nearly made me cry. Not burden, not problem, guest. Daniel led me to a quiet sitting room with soft lamps and a tray of tea. Once we were alone, he said, "You can rest here first. Then we will contact airport authorities and the embassy in the morning." Morning, I repeated. That sounded far away. "You need sleep," he said. "You are in shock." I wanted to argue, but the truth was I could barely think straight. My body felt heavy, like every hour of the day had landed on me at once. Before he left the room, I said, "Why did you help me?" He paused by the doorway. "Because once, a long time ago, someone in an airport saw my mother crying and walked past her like she was invisible." He looked down for a second. "I was too young then to help her. I am not too young now." Then he left me alone with that sentence. I did not sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Chloe walking away. I saw her smooth, cold face. I heard her say, "You should have stayed out of my business, Mom." At some point near dawn, I must have drifted off. When I woke up, sunlight was slipping through the curtains, and for one sweet second I forgot where I was. Then it all came back. I sat up too fast and felt panic rise again. Marta knocked gently and came in with breakfast on a tray. "Good morning, Mrs. Parker," she said. "Mr. Reed is already handling a few things." Handling. That word sounded solid, strong. I washed my face, changed into fresh clothes Marta had laid out for me, and went downstairs. Daniel was at a long table with a laptop open, 2 phones beside him, and a folder already started with my name written neatly on the front. He stood when I entered. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck," I said. That earned the tiniest smile. "That sounds honest." He motioned for me to sit. "I have contacted a lawyer, a private investigator, and someone at the embassy who owes me a favor. We can report your passport stolen. We can arrange emergency travel papers if needed. We can also document what your daughter did before she has time to change the story." I stared at him. "You did all that this morning." "I said I would help," he replied. I looked down at the folder. My throat tightened again. "Why would you do this much for someone you just met?" Daniel folded his hands. "Because what happened to you was cruel. Because people who use family as a weapon count on silence. And because if your daughter and her husband are willing to leave you helpless in public, I do not think they are done causing damage." Those words sat heavy in the room. Not done causing damage. I had been so focused on surviving the airport that I had not thought beyond it, but now the truth spread through me slowly and painfully. If Chloe had my phone and wallet, then she had access to more than I realized. Banking apps, contacts, emails, personal records. I pressed a hand to my mouth. "Oh no." Daniel leaned forward at once. "What?" "My online banking," I said. "Some accounts use my phone for security codes. She might not get into everything, but she knows enough about me to try. And my email. And my doctor records, my insurance." Daniel was already reaching for one of the phones. "Then we lock everything down right now." The next 2 hours moved fast. Too fast for my tired brain, but Daniel and his team worked like people putting out a fire. Calls were made, passwords were changed, alerts were placed. My bank flagged unusual activity. My carrier suspended my phone line. The embassy began paperwork for temporary travel documents. For the first time in years, I let someone else be stronger than me. It felt strange. And good. Around noon, a lawyer named Susan Hale arrived. She was sharp, warm, and direct, with short blonde hair and glasses that made her look like she missed nothing. She asked me clear questions and wrote everything down. "Did your daughter ever say the house should be used as collateral?" "Yes." "Did her husband discuss your will or ownership status repeatedly?" "Yes." "Did you sign anything during this trip?" "No." "Did they ever physically threaten you?" "No, but Chloe took my property and left me with nothing." Susan nodded. "That is serious enough." When the interview ended, she said something that made my stomach turn. "Mrs. Parker, this may not be the first time they have tried this kind of pressure. We should also check whether any documents were prepared in your name before the trip." "Prepared in my names?" I looked at Daniel. "You mean fake papers?" I mean papers meant to be signed under emotional pressure, Susan said. Or worse, papers signed by someone pretending to be authorized. My chest tightened. Chloe would not do that. But even as I said it, my voice sounded weak. Would she not? Or was I still holding on to an old version of my daughter that no longer existed? That afternoon, while Susan was still there, one of Daniel's security men entered the room and handed him a phone. Daniel listened without speaking. His face went still. What is it? I asked. He looked at me carefully. Your daughter has already started telling people that you are unstable. I felt the air leave my body. What? He set the phone down gently. She told hotel staff this morning that you wandered off after becoming confused. She said you sometimes forget things and get emotional. She is building a story that makes her look worried and makes you look unreliable. I could not speak. The shame hit me first, then the hurt, then the rage. Unstable. Confused. Emotional. I had spent years comforting that girl through fevers, heartbreak, nightmares, and bad choices. I had stood beside her every time life slapped her hard, and now she was using my age like a weapon. I stood up so suddenly my chair nearly tipped. I am not confused. I know, Daniel said calmly. She thinks because I am older, no one will believe me. Then we make sure they do, Susan said. My eyes filled with tears, but I refused to let them fall. I want the truth recorded, I said, all of it. And it was. By evening I was exhausted again, but something had changed inside me. I was still hurt, still shaken, still deeply sad, but underneath all that was a new hard feeling. I was done begging for love from people who were trying to use me. After dinner I stepped outside onto a quiet terrace behind the house. The city glowed in the distance. Warm wind brushed my face. For a few peaceful minutes I let myself think about Mark, about the yellow house, about the little girl Chloe used to be. I wondered where that girl had gone. Then I heard the terrace door open behind me. I turned, expecting Marta. It was Daniel. He looked unusually tense. What happened? I asked. He came to stand beside me, holding out a printed page. We found something, he said. I took the paper with trembling fingers. At the top was my full name. Below it was the title of a legal draft. Temporary Asset Transfer Authorization. My knees weakened. This was prepared before you ever boarded the plane, Daniel said quietly. And Linda, there is one more thing. I looked up. The witness line was already filled in, with Brent Lawson's signature, and the second signature line already had my name typed beneath it, as if they had always planned to make sure I signed it somehow, or make it look like I did. For a long moment I could not feel my hands. I just stood there on the terrace, staring at that paper while the warm Dubai wind moved softly around us. My own name was printed on the bottom line like a trap waiting to snap shut. Brent had already signed as a witness. That meant this had not been a sudden bad decision during an argument. This had been planned before we even left America. My daughter had invited me on that trip with a smile on her face, while a paper like this was already waiting. I looked up at Daniel, and my voice came out thin. They meant to force me. He did not soften the truth. Yes. I closed my eyes. When I opened them again, the city lights looked blurry. I realized tears had filled my eyes without falling. That was how it had been with me for years. So many tears had sat inside me without ever making it down my face. I had kept the peace. I had stayed polite. I had explained away selfishness because I did not want to lose my daughter completely. Now there was nothing left to explain away. I handed the paper back to Daniel. How bad is it? He looked down at the page, then back at me. Bad enough that we have to move carefully, good enough that they have not won. That strange little sentence held me together. Bad enough that we have to move carefully, good enough that they have not won. I repeated it in my head like a prayer. Daniel and I went back inside. Susan was still in the sitting room with her files open. When she saw my face, she stood up right away. You found something else, she said. Daniel handed her the paper. She read it once, then again more slowly. "This was prepared in advance," she said. "That matters, it helps show intent." Intent. That word felt sharp. Not confusion, not misunderstanding, intent. Susan sat down and motioned for me to do the same. "Linda, I need to ask one hard question. Had Chloe or Brent ever tried to get you to sign papers before this trip?" I thought about it carefully. "Not exactly like this," I said, "but Brent has been asking questions for over a year, about the house, about my will, about how assets pass after death. Once he brought over a folder and said he knew a planner who could help me avoid probate. I told him I would speak to my own lawyer. He looked irritated. Chloe said I was being difficult." Susan nodded and wrote quickly. "That fits the pattern." "What pattern?" I asked. "The pattern of people who think kindness makes someone easier to control." I sat very still after that. Because she was right. My kindness had become part of their plan. They counted on me not wanting to make a scene. They counted on me wanting family peace more than personal safety. They counted on guilt. And for years, guilt had worked on me better than anything else. The next morning, we learned something else. My bank had flagged a failed access attempt from a device that was not mine. Then my email showed several password reset requests. Someone was trying to break in fast before I could regain control. Daniel did not have to say the words, I already knew. Chloe and Brent were not only trying to trap me with papers, they were trying to get into everything they could. I sat at the breakfast table, holding a cup of tea that had already gone cold. "I do not understand," I said quietly. "They already have nice things, a good apartment, trips, expensive clothes. Why do they need more?" Daniel answered before Susan could. "Because greed grows." I looked at him. He leaned back in his chair and spoke in the calm tone he used when he wanted me to hear something clearly. "Some people stop when they have enough. Some people do not. Some people start to believe other people's hard work should belong to them if they want it badly enough. That kind of thinking never stays small." I thought of Brent smiling at dinner, Brent asking about my will, Brent calling my house dead weight. I thought of Chloe repeating his words until they sounded like her own. Then Susan added something that hurt even more. "Also, Linda, sometimes it is not only greed, sometimes it is pride. If Brent built part of his image around being successful, then not getting what he wants from you becomes an insult in his mind. People like that do not just want money, they want control, they want to win." That landed hard. Win. Was that what I had become to them? A game to win. An old woman to outsmart. A door to money. I pushed my tea away. "What do we do now?" Susan closed her folder. "We get ahead of them." That day, the plan changed from protection to action. First, Susan contacted my lawyer back home and arranged an urgent video call. His name was Robert Hale, no relation to Susan, and he had known me and Mark for years. He looked shocked when my face appeared on his screen. "Linda, what on earth happened?" So I told him. Not just about the airport, but about everything. The pressure, the hidden document, the failed attempts on my accounts, the lies Chloe was already spreading. Robert listened without interrupting. When I finished, he took off his glasses and rubbed his forehead. "I always worried about that husband of hers," he said. I let out one sad little laugh. "You and me both." He became serious again. "I need you to listen carefully. The house is still safe because the original deed is secure and no signed transfer exists. Your will is also unchanged. But when you get back, I want everything locked down harder than before. New power of attorney restrictions, property alerts, a statement on file that no transfer discussion is valid unless done in person through my office." I nodded. "Do it." He looked me in the eye. "And Linda, I think you need to consider more than protection now. I think you need to decide whether Chloe should remain in that will at all." That sentence sat between us like a stone. A mother is not supposed to think that way. At least that is what we are taught. We are taught that love must always leave the door open, that blood must always matter, that mothers forgive, that mothers wait. But what happens when waiting becomes a way to help someone destroy you? I did not answer right away. Robert did not push. We ended the call and I went upstairs to lie down for a while, but I could not rest. My thoughts kept moving in circles. Chloe at 6 with pigtails. Chloe at 16 with braces. Chloe at 28, cool and sharp, watching my boarding pass disappear. I kept trying to place one face on top of the other and make them fit. They did not. That afternoon, Daniel knocked on my door. "Do you feel steady enough for some news?" "That depended on the news," I said. He gave a tiny nod. "Fair answer." I followed him downstairs to his office. It was neat and quiet, with shelves, a large desk, and a wall of glass that looked out over a courtyard. One of his staff members had printed several pages and laid them in order. Daniel pointed to them. We looked into Brent. My stomach tightened. "What did you find?" "Not everything yet," he said, "but enough to explain some of the pressure." He handed me the top sheet. It showed business filings, loan records, and something called notice of default. I frowned. "I do not understand this." "It means," Daniel said, "Brent is in much worse financial shape than he pretends." He explained it slowly. Brent had borrowed money against future commissions that never came. He had made risky investment promises to impress people. He was involved in a property deal in Dubai that had stalled. He owed private lenders. And some of those lenders were not patient. I stared at the papers. "So that is why he needed my house." Daniel nodded. Yes, the yellow house represented quick security, something real, something he could use to borrow more or save face or cover part of what he owed, maybe all three. I sat down hard. Then this trip was never about family. No, Daniel said, it was about access. I looked at the stack of papers again. Everything began to connect in a plain, ugly way. Why Chloe was suddenly calling again. Why Brent wanted the documents in Dubai. Why they were pushing so fast. Why she panicked when I mentioned changing my will. It all came back to money. But then I looked up at Daniel. How did Chloe get pulled this far in? His expression changed a little. We found something else. He handed me another page. This one was not financial, it was a photo. Chloe and Brent at a dinner with several people I did not know. Chloe looked glamorous, smiling too wide, holding a glass in one hand. Brent looked proud. Next to them stood a woman in red and a man I recognized from one of the hotel dinners. The same investor Brent had introduced as someone important. Daniel spoke carefully. Brent has been presenting a lifestyle he cannot actually afford. Chloe has been part of that world for a while. Fancy trips, expensive dinners, the image of being wealthy. She may have believed that once this deal worked, everything would be fine, that your house was just a bridge, not a theft. I felt sick. So she lied to herself first. Sometimes that is how people do terrible things, Daniel said. They rename them. Bridge instead of betrayal. Help instead of theft. Pressure instead of cruelty. Love instead of control. I looked away. That sounded too true. The next shock came before sunset. Marta entered the office softly and said, "Sir, there is a call. It is the daughter." Daniel looked at me. "Do you want to take it?" My heart began to race. "No," I said quickly. Then I stopped. "Yes." He put the call on speaker, but stayed close by. For 1 second there was only silence. Then Chloe's voice came through, smooth and sweet. "Mom, oh thank goodness, are you all right?" The sound of her voice nearly broke me. It was so familiar, so practiced. The same voice that used to say I love you after school, the same voice that had told me she was too busy to visit on my birthday last year. I kept mine steady. "You left me in an airport with no phone, no wallet and no passport." A small pause. "Mom, that is not what happened." My fingers curled around the edge of the desk. "Then tell me what happened." "You were upset," she said. "You refused to calm down, you walked away from me. I have been worried sick." I almost laughed. The lie was so bold it felt unreal. "I did not walk away. You took my things and cancelled my ticket." Maury silence. Then her voice dropped the sweet act. You should not have embarrassed me in front of Brent. There she was. The real Chloe. I spoke quietly. Did you invite me to Dubai to try to force me to sign property papers? She did not answer for a second, and that second told me everything. Mom, she said at last, you are overreacting. Brent just wanted to protect the family. Protect the family by leaving me helpless in a foreign airport. You were not helpless, you are dramatic. Daniel moved slightly beside me but said nothing. I swallowed the hurt and pushed on. Did you know papers had been prepared before I arrived? Again, silence. Then she snapped. You always do this. You act like a victim when anyone asks you for trust. That house should help this family, not sit there like some shrine to a dead life. My breath caught. A dead life. That was how she saw it. The home where her father lived. The home where I held us together after he died. The home that fed and clothed her. A dead life. When I spoke again, my voice had changed. It sounded colder than I had ever heard it. Listen carefully, Chloe. I know about the document. I know about the account access attempts. And I know Brent is in debt. The line went dead silent. Then she said only 3 words. Who told you? Truth always finds a way out, I said. Her breathing changed, fast now. Mom, you do not understand what is happening. Then explain it. This time when she answered, her voice was lower, shakier, and for one moment I heard fear instead of pride. Brent said if this deal collapsed, everything would fall apart. He said we would lose everything. He said your house would only be used for a little while. He said once the money moved, we could put it back and you would never even feel it. I closed my eyes. So you knew? I knew he was desperate, she whispered. I did not know he would go this far. You left me in an airport. I know. You lied about me. I know. You took my passport and wallet. Her voice cracked. I was coming back. No, I said, you were waiting for me to break. And she did not deny it. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then she said something that chilled me. Mom, you need to stop talking to outside people. Brent is trying to fix this, but if the wrong men think he cannot pay soon, we are all in danger. Daniel and I looked at each other. I spoke carefully. What men? She answered too fast. Nobody. Then why are you afraid? Another pause. When she spoke again, the sweetness was gone completely. If you do not stop making this harder, you are going to ruin all of us. The line clicked dead. I stood frozen. Daniel took the phone off speaker. That was not just guilt talking, he said quietly. No, I whispered, that was fear. And now we knew something worse than greed was circling this mess. There were other people involved. People Chloe was afraid of. People Brent owed. People who might not care who got hurt. I pressed both hands to my face for a second. This has gone too far. Daniel answered in a voice so calm it scared me. Yes, and I think it is about to get worse. I looked up. Why? He turned the screen of his laptop toward me. On it was a security image from the airport. 2 men stood near the area where Chloe had left me. One was the man who had said, Mom, you dropped something. The other was looking directly toward me. Daniel tapped the image once. Our people identified one of them. He works for a private debt enforcer tied to one of Brent Lawson's lenders. My blood turned to ice. You mean they were not there by chance? No, Daniel said. They were there because someone knew your daughter was going to leave you exposed. And just like that, I understood the ugly truth. Brent had not only planned to pressure me, he had made me part of a much darker mess. And somewhere in Dubai, my daughter was still with him. I did not sleep at all that night. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw that airport image again. The man smiling as he said, Mom, you dropped something. The other man watching from behind. Daniel had said they worked for someone tied to Brent's debt. That meant I had not only been abandoned, I had been exposed on purpose. Maybe Brent had not cared what happened to me after Chloe walked away. Maybe he had cared too little to ask. Either way, the result was the same. I sat by the window in my room and watched the sky lighten over Dubai. The city looked peaceful from up there. Clean, bright, beautiful, but beauty can hide ugly things, I knew that now. At breakfast, Daniel was already dressed for work, but there was a harder look on his face than before. Susan had come back early too. A man from Daniel's security team stood near the door, speaking quietly into an earpiece. The whole house felt alert. I sat down slowly. "Tell me the truth," I said, "all of it." Daniel nodded. "That is exactly what we are going to do." Susan opened a folder and slid a few papers toward me. "We spent part of the night pulling together more background on Brent," she said. "He is in financial trouble, yes, but that is not the whole problem. He borrowed from people he should never have dealt with. Some of the money came through private lenders connected to overseas property deals, the kind of people who smile while they trap you." My stomach turned. "And Chloe knew?" "Not everything," Daniel said, "but enough to know he was hiding serious trouble." I pressed my hands together under the table. "Then tell me why she still went along with it." Daniel did not rush his answer. "Because she believed two things at once. First, that Brent would fix everything if he just got one more chance. Second, that you would survive whatever pressure he put on you. Some people do terrible things because they believe the person they hurt will recover. They tell themselves it is temporary. That makes it easier for them to live with what they are doing." That hurt because it sounded true. Chloe had always been good at telling herself a softer version of the truth. When she broke a vase at 12, she said it had slipped. When she lied about staying at a friend's house in college, she said she had not wanted me to worry. When she used my credit card once without asking and paid me back later, she called it borrowing, not stealing. She had been renaming bad behavior for years. Brent had just taught her to do it bigger. Susan turned another page toward me. "There is more. We found communication between Brent and one of his business contacts discussing your property before the trip. They referred to it as secure American collateral." I closed my eyes. "Not my home, not my life, collateral." "And now," Daniel said, "because the deal is failing, Brent may be desperate enough to do something reckless." "Like what?" I asked. Before he could answer, the security man at the door stepped forward and handed Daniel a phone. "Sir," he said quietly, "you need to see this." Daniel looked at the screen. His face went still. "What is it?" I asked. He turned the phone toward me. It was a picture message. My passport, my wallet, and my phone were laid out on a hotel bed like trophies. Below the image was a text. "Tell Linda to stop making trouble. One signature ends this." I stared at the message so long the words blurred. They still had my things. And they were still trying to force me. Susan let out a slow breath. "That is useful evidence," she said. "Useful evidence," I repeated. I know she was right, but in that moment I wanted more than evidence. I wanted my daughter to wake up and become human again. Daniel typed a short reply before showing it to Susan. She nodded. He sent it. "What did you write?" I asked. He met my eyes. "That all communication must go through counsel now, and that possession of your passport and property has been documented." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Brent is not going to like that." "No," Daniel said, "he is not." For a while nobody spoke. The room held that heavy silence people sit inside when the truth has become too large to ignore. At last I said the thing that had been burning in me. "I need to see Chloe." Susan shook her head at once. "Not alone." "I would not go alone," I said, "but I need to look her in the eye. I need to know if there is anything left to save." Daniel watched me carefully. "If we arrange that, it will be controlled, public, secure, and only if it helps us." I nodded. "Fine." He leaned back in his chair. "Then first I need to tell you one more thing." My chest tightened. "What now?" "The hotel where Chloe and Brent were staying checked them out this morning, but they did not go to the airport. They moved to a private villa outside the city." "Why?" Daniel held my gaze. Because they are hiding or preparing. Preparing for what? He answered plainly. To run, to pressure you harder, or to meet the people Brent owes. That last part made my hands go cold. I thought about Chloe on the phone saying, if the wrong men think he cannot pay soon, we are all in danger. Maybe she had not only meant Brent. Maybe she had meant herself too. For the first time since all this started, I felt something other than grief and anger. I felt a strange, reluctant fear for my daughter. Not because she deserved protection from consequences, she did not. But because no matter what she had done, I still knew what it was to carry her as a baby. I still remembered her tiny fingers wrapped around mine. Mothers can be furious and heartbroken and still afraid for their children all at once. It is a miserable thing. Daniel seemed to read that on my face. You are worried about her, he said. I looked away. I hate what she did, but yes. That does not make you weak, Susan said. It makes you a mother. I swallowed hard. The rest of that morning moved quickly. Daniel's team increased security. Susan coordinated with local council and the embassy. My temporary travel documents were now nearly ready, but Daniel wanted me to stay inside until things settled. I did not argue. Around noon, Marta brought me lunch on a tray and sat with me for a few minutes in the garden room. Her presence was quiet and kind. She did not ask nosy questions. She just poured tea and waited until I spoke. Do you have children? I asked. A son, she said. Does he ever break your heart? She smiled sadly. Every child breaks your heart at least once. The prayer is that they do not keep doing it on purpose. I looked down at my tea. That sounded about right. Marta folded her hands in her lap. Sometimes people do not become cruel all at once, Mrs. Parker. Sometimes they become used to excusing themselves. Then one day they stand in a place they never thought they would reach. I thought of Chloe again, not evil as a child, not cruel in the beginning, just slowly changing little by little, excuse by excuse. That afternoon, Daniel came to find me. We may have an opening, he said. I sat up straighter. What kind of opening? A meeting. Chloe wants to see you. Alone, she says, but that will not happen. We can control the location. We can record everything. If she talks freely, it could help us and it may tell us how much danger Brent is actually in. My heart started pounding. Where? A private dining room in a hotel I trust. Security on site. Susan present nearby. My people close enough to intervene if needed. I stood and walked to the window. Part of me wanted to refuse. Another part knew I needed it. When? In 2 hours. That was too soon. It was not enough time to prepare my heart, but hearts do not get much warning in life. I turned back to him. I will do it. Susan helped me get ready, not with clothes but with clarity. She made me practice short, direct answers. She reminded me not to argue about every lie. She told me to let Chloe speak and fill the silence. Truth often comes out when people rush to protect themselves, she said. Daniel drove with me to the hotel, though another car followed behind us. The city outside the window looked unreal again, all glass and heat and money. I wondered how many private lives were hidden inside all that shine. The hotel meeting room was beautiful in a cold way. Soft lighting, thick carpet, polished table, a bowl of white flowers in the center, too elegant for the kind of pain sitting down at that table. I waited with my hands clasped tight in my lap. Then the door opened. Chloe stepped in alone. For 1 second my breath caught. She looked tired, not in the normal way, not from late nights or long flights. She looked worn from the inside. Her makeup was perfect, but her eyes were ringed with strain. Her beautiful hair was neat, but one side had been tucked back too quickly, as if her hands had been shaking. She wore cream-colored trousers and a silk blouse, trying to look calm and expensive and in control. But I could see fear all over her. Mom, she said. That one word nearly split me in two. I did not stand. Sit down, Chloe. She sat. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. She looked at my face like she was trying to judge what I knew and how angry I was. Then she said softly, I am sorry. I felt nothing at first. The words were too small, too late. Sorry for what? Her eyes flickered. For everything getting out of hand. I leaned forward. No, use plain words. Sorry for what? She looked down. For taking your things, for leaving you there, for lying. That was better, still not enough, but better. I kept my voice steady. Why did you do it? She pressed her lips together. Brent said we were running out of time. He said if we did not secure something real, the Dubai investors would pull out. He said once that happened, the lenders would come after us hard. He told me your house would save us. Save you from what? Debt, she whispered. How much debt? She hesitated. Millions. The word landed like a brick. Millions. I stared at her. Brent was not chasing luxury anymore, he was drowning. I asked the next question carefully. How did he get that deep? Bad deals, showing off, borrowing to cover other borrowing, private promises. When one project failed, he used another to hide it. Then he started telling people money was coming from family support, from you. My voice shook. He promised my house before you even asked me. Yes. And you stayed with him. Tears filled her eyes. I thought he could fix it. I thought if we could just get through one more month, one more deal, one more meeting, things would settle down. That old lie. One more month. One more chance. One more excuse. I looked at her and saw a woman who had traded truth for comfort, until comfort turned into panic. Then I asked the question that mattered most. Did you know men connected to his debt were at the airport? Her face changed instantly. What? Answer me. No, she said at once. No, I knew Brent had ugly lenders, but I did not know anyone would be there. I thought leaving you alone would scare you, not put you in real danger. I swear that on Dad's memory. I studied her closely. For the first time she looked truly shocked, not polished, not careful, shocked. And I believed she was telling the truth about that part. You thought fear was acceptable, I said quietly. You just did not think the danger would be real. She began to cry then, not loudly, not dramatically, just little broken tears sliding down a face that had finally run out of lies. I never meant for it to go that far, she whispered. But it did. I know. You called me unstable. Brent told me to. He said if anyone asked questions, I had to get ahead of the story. So you helped erase me. She covered her mouth with one hand. I am ashamed, Mom. Good, I said before I could stop myself. You should be. She flinched. Then, after a long silence, she said something I was not expecting. Brent is not just scared of lenders anymore. I waited. She lowered her voice. He took something. What do you mean, took something? Documents, client records, internal deal files. He said they were leverage. He said if the investors tried to cut him out, he had proof of things they did not want exposed. But now those papers are missing and he thinks someone in his own circle took them back. That is why he is acting crazy. He thinks everyone is turning on him. A cold feeling ran through me. That explained the panic, the hiding, the pressure, the sudden danger. This was bigger than unpaid loans. This was a man clawing at the air while his whole fake life collapsed around him. Where is he now? I asked. At the villa. He thinks I am at the spa. If he knew I came here, he would lose his mind. I looked straight at her. Then come with me, right now, leave him. Her face crumpled. I cannot. Why not? Because he has the only copy of something that can protect me. Protect you from what? She looked at the table. From being blamed. I felt a sharp stab of anger again. Blamed for what, Chloe? For helping him move money, she whispered. I went completely still. You what? She was crying harder now. I signed transfer approvals, small ones at first, then larger ones. He said it was temporary, he said it was normal. Some of the money was tied to shell companies. I knew it looked wrong. But he promised it was just how these deals were done. My mouth went dry. So you were involved? Yes, she said. That is why I panicked when you refused us. If Brent went down, I thought I would go down with him. There it was. The full ugly shape of it. What they were involved in. Why the betrayal happened. Why the pressure became extreme. How everyone was connected. Chloe was not only a blind wife following orders. She had stepped into the dirt with him. Maybe not all the way at first, maybe not proudly, but she had stepped. I sat back in my chair, exhausted. I do not even know who you are anymore. She looked up with tears on her cheeks. I do not either. For one moment, that felt like the truest thing she had said all day. Then the door burst open. Daniel stepped in fast, with one of his security men behind him. We have to go now, he said. Chloe jumped to her feet. What happened? Daniel looked at her first, then at me. The villa has been hit. My blood ran cold. Hit by who? One of Brent's lenders, Daniel said. The police are moving. Brent ran. Chloe made a choking sound. Ran where? Daniel's expression was hard as stone. Based on what we intercepted, he thinks you betrayed him. He believes you came here to turn on him. Chloe's face went white. And then Daniel said the words that changed everything again. He is on his way here. For one frozen second, nobody moved. Then Chloe made a small broken sound and grabbed the edge of the table like her legs might give out. I felt my own heart pounding so hard it seemed to shake my whole body. Daniel was already in motion, calm and fast at the same time. We leave through the service hall, he said. Now. His security man opened the door and checked both sides. Susan appeared from the side room at once, her face tight with focus. Chloe looked at me with tears running down her cheeks. Mom, I am sorry, I am so sorry. I looked at her, really looked at her. She was not the polished woman from fancy dinners now. She was a frightened human being standing inside the ruins of her own choices. Move, I said. We hurried through a quiet back corridor, down one elevator, then through a private exit into an underground parking area. 2 black vehicles were already waiting. Daniel guided me into the first one with Susan. Chloe was placed in the second with security. As the doors shut, I turned to Daniel. Is Brent armed? We do not think so, he said, but desperate people do foolish things. The car pulled away. I looked through the window at the lights of the hotel sliding past and felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. This was what it had come to. Lawyers, security teams, hidden exits, all because one man wanted to look rich and one daughter wanted to keep believing a lie. We drove back to Daniel's house by a longer route. Once inside, the gates closed behind us and more security took position. Marta met us at the entrance, pale but steady, and led Chloe to a sitting room while Daniel spoke quietly into his phone. I stayed in the main hall for a moment, trying to catch my breath. Then Chloe came back. She had washed her face, but her eyes were swollen. She looked younger somehow, not because she was innocent, but because fear had stripped away the hard, shiny mask she had been wearing for so long. Mom, she said softly, can I please talk to you alone? Susan started to object, but I raised a hand. Not fully alone, I said, the door stays open. Chloe nodded quickly. We sat in a small room just off the hall. The door remained open. I could see Daniel speaking with one of his men outside, but he gave us space. For a few seconds, Chloe just cried quietly. Then she wiped her face and forced herself to speak. I need to tell you everything now. Yes, I said, you do. And she did. She told me Brent had not only lied to investors, he had lied to lenders too. He had used money from one deal to cover losses in another. He created fake confidence by throwing expensive parties and acting like success was always one step away. Chloe helped him move money through accounts she should never have touched because he told her it was temporary and legal enough to survive if the deal closed. She wanted to believe him because admitting the truth would mean admitting their whole life was fake. Then things got worse. A group of overseas lenders began pressuring Brent. They wanted repayment. He promised them he could secure family property from America. That family property was my yellow house. He told them it was safe, valuable, and easy to use once I signed the transfer authorization. When I refused, he panicked. Then he took records from one of the Dubai project groups as leverage, thinking it would buy him time. Instead, it made everybody angry. The investors wanted the records back. The lenders wanted money. And Brent wanted my house more than ever. So the trip was not really a vacation, Chloe said through tears. It was a trap. He said if you signed, we could stabilize things and fix it before anybody got hurt. I told myself it was only a short-term move. I told myself you would forgive me later when everything was safe again. I kept telling myself that until I stopped hearing how ugly it sounded. I sat very still. Then why leave me at the airport? Because you said you might change your will, she whispered. Brent lost it after that. He said if fear would not move you, abandonment might. He said once you felt helpless, you would sign anything to get home. I knew it was wrong, I knew it, but I still did it. She broke down again then, shoulders shaking. I thought I was helping my husband. I thought I was saving my life, but I was helping him destroy everything. That was the plain truth, at last. I did not rush to comfort her. Some pain has to be felt fully before it teaches anything. After a while, I asked the question that had been waiting in my chest. Did you love me at all while you were doing this? She looked up, stunned, as if she had not expected that to be the hardest question. Yes, she whispered, that is what makes it so horrible. I loved you, but I chose fear and greed over love. I kept thinking I could do something wrong just once and still be the same person after. I was wrong. That answer hurt, but it was honest. And honesty was the first decent thing she had given me in a long time. Just then Daniel stepped into view. Police have Brent, he said. Chloe gasped. I stood up slowly. Alive? Yes, Daniel said, alive and in custody. He tried to leave the city using a private contact, but the lenders were already looking for him and the authorities moved first. The records he stole were found in his possession. The room went quiet. It was over. Not magically, not neatly, but over. In the days that followed, everything became clearer. With help from Susan, Robert, the embassy and Daniel's team, my documents were recovered. My passport, wallet and phone were returned through legal channels. My accounts were secured. My property was locked down with stronger legal protections. A formal statement was recorded showing that I had never signed any transfer and that any attempt to use my property had been fraudulent. Brent faced charges tied to financial misconduct, theft of records, and coercive acts connected to the property scheme. Because Chloe cooperated fully after the hotel meeting and gave investigators messages, account details, and the full story, her legal outcome was different. She was still held responsible for what she had done, but her cooperation mattered. Responsibility. That was important. I did not want a fairy tale ending where everyone cried and everything disappeared. That is not how life works. If people make terrible choices, there should be consequences. Chloe lost the life she had built with Brent. The apartment, the image, the polished world she was so desperate to protect, most of it collapsed. Friends vanished. Invitations stopped. The people who loved the shine disappeared when the shine was gone. And me. I changed too. A week later, I flew home safely. Daniel came to the airport with Marta to see me off. This time I had my documents in my own hands. This time no one could touch my ticket. Before I entered security, I turned to Daniel. You saved my life, I said. He shook his head gently. You saved it too. You chose truth when it would have been easier to stay quiet. I smiled through tears. That was one of the nicest things anyone had said to me in years. Back in America, the first thing I did was go to the yellow house. It was late afternoon. The little porch looked just the same. The paint was a little older. The roses near the walkway needed trimming. But it was still standing, warm in the sunlight, full of memory. I stood there for a long time with my hand on the gate and let myself cry for Mark, for the years I had spent trying to hold everyone together, and for the truth I had finally stopped running from. A house is not just wood and nails. Sometimes it is proof that your life mattered. I kept the house. I updated my will. And yes, I changed it. Not from revenge alone, though I will be honest, part of me wanted Chloe to feel what loss tasted like. But I made the change for a deeper reason. Trust is precious. If someone is willing to use your love against you, you do not hand them the keys to your future and call it kindness. I placed most of the house and my savings into a protected trust. A portion was set aside for causes Mark cared about, including a scholarship fund for students from single-parent homes. A smaller portion remained open for Chloe only if she met certain conditions over time: honesty, counseling, legal compliance, and years of consistent responsible behavior. Not promises, not tears, proof. When Chloe came to see me for the first time after we returned, she looked plain, tired, and humble. No designer bag, no polished smile, just my daughter stripped down to the truth. We sat at my kitchen table. She said, "I do not expect you to forgive me now." I answered, "That is good, because forgiveness is not the same as pretending something never happened." She nodded and cried quietly. I did not hug her right away, but I did not throw her out either. Healing, if it comes, should come honestly. Over the next year she kept showing up. Counseling, work, accountability, no excuses, no more renamed lies. She had a long road ahead, but for the first time in years she was walking on solid ground. As for me, I became stronger than I had been before Dubai. Not louder, not harder, stronger. I learned that silence can be dangerous when it protects the wrong people. I learned that family betrayal cuts deep, but it does not have to destroy your life. I learned that trusting your instincts is not cruelty, it is wisdom. And I learned that sometimes the bravest thing a mother can do is stop rescuing the child who keeps setting the fire. Months later, Daniel called to check on me. We laughed about how terrible airport coffee is and how Marta still worried he worked too much. He told me I sounded different. "Better," I said. "You do," he replied. And he was right. I was better. Not because the pain had vanished, but because the truth had set me free from begging love from people who wanted control. So if you are listening to my story, remember this. Love should never ask you to destroy yourself to prove you care. Family should not use fear as a tool. And when your heart warns you that something is wrong, listen. It may save your future. My name is Linda Parker, and the day my daughter left me stranded in Dubai, I thought my life was ending. It was not ending. It was the day I finally began to wake up. And if this story touched your heart, let it remind you to value truth, protect your peace, and stay close to people who choose love over greed. And while you are thinking about that, take a quiet second to like, comment, and subscribe, because stories like this matter when they help us feel less alone.
오빠, 돌려줄게. 오빠, 900원 줄 수 있어? 콜비 900원 나오는데?
하이패스 없나?
아, 있어.
근데
그냥 900원 주라.
그래 가자.
얼굴 웃긴 징배님 사랑해요. 별풍선 1개 감사합니다. 수행기사야 후딱 광명으로 달려라.
이 정도면 보이죠?
다 보여요. 그냥 이렇게 하면 돼요.
더 돌려줄까요?
맞아요. 바로, 아니, 괜찮아요.
괜찮아요?
네.
안 불편해요?
편해요.
될게요.
더 대구로 바로 내려가요. 일정 없으면 거의 내려가서 있으니까. 근데 원래 계획을 하긴 했었던 게 모처럼 또 서울 왔으니까 야방 같은 거 좀 할까 하다가